the slopes of Mount Fuji, generations of Japanese continue to show their reverence for nature. 2/3 of this beautiful country is still covered by pristine, protected forest. Yet here in Kiba Harbor in Tokyo, reverence gives way to rape. Once mighty forests reduced to wallowing hulks. Not so long ago, much of the tropical timber imported into Japan came from the forests of Thailand. Since then, most of what was left by the loggers has been cleared for agriculture. But here in Thailand and in Japan itself, champions of the forest have emerged. Reverence may yet prove mightier than the chainsaw. Of all the environments on Earth, the tropical forests are by far the richest and by far the most important, for they are home to between 70 and 90% of all the millions of species with which we share this planet. Lose them, we lose the biological foundations of life on Earth. And yet losing them is exactly what we're doing. Already, in just a few decades, over half of the world's tropical forests have been destroyed. If nothing is done, most of the rest will vanish within our lifetimes. And by the year 2020, 1/3 of all species on the planet may be lost. Millions of years of evolution wiped out in the time it takes to set a fire to fell a tree. Tribal people displaced and their cultures destroyed. The land impoverished, incapable of sustaining agriculture. The climate changed and made drier, locally at first, then regionally. Potential benefits to we humans, like new drugs, new crops, new products, lost before we can even give them a name. The destruction of the tropical forests and the extinction of species are different from most other environmental problems, for they cannot be reversed. Extinction is, indeed, forever. As far as Japan is concerned, the tropical timber trade is still booming. Southeast Asia is being skinned alive to keep those logs flowing in. Unfortunately, the environment movement in Japan is still very weak, and big business is frighteningly powerful. It's that imbalance which defines the challenge for Yoichi Kuroda, a dogged, courageous campaigner, deeply ashamed of his country's environmental reputation and international record.
私が7年前にフィリピンにミンダナオ島に行った時にものすごいひどいハゲ山を見まして、それに非常に大きなショックを受けて、この熱帯林破壊をなんとか食い止めたいと思ったわけです。私たちの熱帯林行動ネットワークはこの日本の本当に浪費的な木材の消費、熱帯木材の使い捨てをやめさせるということはまず第一の仕事だと考えています。
Over the last 30 years, Japan's economy has grown faster than any other countries in the world. For many Japanese, these hanging gardens of neon are about as near to nature as they're likely to get. But not many countries can match Japan's impressive record on pollution control, energy efficiency, or recycling. It's what happens overseas that causes such concern. In more and more countries, it is Japanese capital that fuels the juggernaut of industrial progress. Whole cultures can get crushed beneath its wheels.
My name is Jokjao Ewong. I am the chairman of the Oma Bawang Resident Association, who come from Baram, the state of Sarawak, Malaysia.
Logging in Sarawak for export to Japan has brought its tribal people to the verge of extinction. Jatan has taken up their cause.
Now you can see the forest. This is the way how forest is, and this is a man. I think he's Penan. He's looking for food in the forest, hunting for food. This is how life in the forest, life in the jungle. These people are staying very peacefully. Nobody disturb them. They just left behind. The children just left behind. The father has hunting for food in the forest. This is how forest life.
私たちがサラワクの先住民を日本に招待したのは、サラワクの森林がもうあと4、5年で原生林が全て伐採されてしまうという非常にもう危機的な状況にあるからです。彼らは森林の伐採によっても彼らの生存や文化がもう破壊されてしまうということで、そのことをITTO や日本の政府や市民に訴えて。
Next slide.
In many tropical countries, the exports of hardwood was a main dollar.
Tokyo is the headquarters of the ITTO, the International Tropical Timber Organization. Would-be guardians of the forest, but essentially a glorified commodity agreement with a few pale green trimmings.
ITTO は原則としてはコンセンサスベースの審議を行っていますけれども、第一に ITTO はその投票権そのものとしては日本とかヨーロッパなどの木材の最大輸入国がたくさん票数を持っている、あるいはマレーシアやブラジル、インドネシアのような木材輸出国や資源国が持っているということで、非常に偏った票数を持っているわけです。ですからしかもそういう国というのは熱帯林を破壊しそこから収奪するということで、基本政策にしてますから。
Direct action, a la Greenpeace, is an important part of Jathan's campaigning. Japan imports 45% of all the world's tropical timber, and almost all of it is used in just one business, the construction industry. In a process that literally defies belief, these precious tropical hardwoods are turned into plywood molds, into which the concrete for the foundations is poured. Once the concrete is set, the plywood molds are removed and then burnt. It's cheaper to whistle up another logged forest than to reuse the timber, let alone to find a different construction method. One of the newest and biggest buildings in Japan is the Tokyo Town Hall. Power, money and prestige. Its architecture speaks a simple language.
Of course, この建物自体はプレキャスト工法で鉄骨ですから、全部に熱帯木材が使ってあるわけではないんですけれども、ここで主に使っているのは地下の部分、駐車場とか、そういう部分が多いわけです。問題なのは、もちろんそういう部分で大体、44万平方メートル、大体5000本とか、数千本の熱帯木材が使われたと、言われていますけれども、この前の庁舎ですね、古い庁舎はたった30年しか使われませんでした。で、この、巨大な怪物のような庁舎が一体これから何年使われるか分かりませんけれども、いずれにしても非常に短いライフサイクルで、建物が作られるということで、それだけ回転が速くてどんどん新しい熱帯木材が使われる。
5,000 trees to build an underground car park. For Jathan, that's an unacceptable price for progress. But after several years of banging their heads against the brick wall of national government and big business, Jiatan is now targeting local government and the general public with considerable success. More and more Japanese people are awakening to their environmental responsibilities.
物事に本当に気づいてそれを理解すればみんなが行動を起こす国民じゃないかと思います。ですから日本の市民の意識を本当に変えること、みんなが本当に問題を理解すること、そのことを通じて世界の人々に役に立つことができる。我々自身ももっと幸福になれるんじゃないか、そういうふうに思います。
Jiatan works closely with other rainforest campaigns around the world. In Britain, Friends of the Earth and WWF have forced the main hardware stores to seek out hardwoods from sustainably managed sources. In Belize, Central America, a campaign has helped to save the jaguar by preventing rainforests being turned over to sugar plantations. In many parts of Latin America, beef production for the American hamburger market is a major cause of deforestation, and a campaign is being waged in the states to boycott the fast food chains. And at last, governments too are starting to take action. In 1989, after a spate of serious floods, Thailand became the first country in the world officially to ban logging. To return a logged-out tropical forest to anything like its former glory is an incredibly difficult business. But here in northern Thailand, a Buddhist monk, Ajahn Pongsak, is showing the way by turning a desert back into a forest.
เมื่อปี 2511 อาจารย์ได้เดินผ่านมาทางนี้ป่าบริเวณนี้เป็นป่าเต็งรังดินก็ยังอุดมสมบูรณ์อยู่นี่ได้มีบริษัทเอกชนทำยาสูบได้รับสัมปทานจากรัฐบาลให้เอาไม้นั้นไปทำเชื้อเพลิงบ่มใบยาสูบและได้มาตัดบริเวณนี้เป็นแปลงไม้ที่สัมปทานหมดไปแล้วก็เหลือไม้เล็กๆแล้วชาวบ้านก็เผาถ่านตามหลังเมื่อชาวบ้านเผาถ่านแล้วไม่มีอะไรปกคลุมรักษาหน้าดิน
Even here, in this man-made desert, small patches of the original forest remain. This sacred grove has become the spiritual center of Ajahn Pongsak's work, an ecological oasis that helps nurture some of Thailand's genetic abundance. Local people depend on this biological diversity in many different ways. The markets in northern Thailand are still rich in the fruits of the forest, used both for food and medicine. When the forest goes, so too does this natural pharmacy. One of Ajahn Pongsak's closest colleagues is Nunie Svasti, an extraordinary storehouse of knowledge and wisdom about the region's plants and trees.
Now, this is really good fun. This flower here is of the Bignon family, and it's called Midnight Horror. It blooms at midnight. The inside is a dark crimson red so that it looks like there's blood there, right? When it falls off, it produces this long pod, which also has medicinal properties. And both things, of course, can be used in soups.
Nunie was the prime mover in setting up the Dhammanaat Foundation back in 1983 to raise money to reforest the critical watersheds of Mae Soi. The essence of the foundation's work is to return the land to the people for sustainable food production. That requires fertile soil and plenty of water, and you can't get those without restoring the watershed's forests. More than 1,000 villagers are now involved in the project. The first stage of Ajahn Pongsak's ambitious restoration scheme required the bulldozing of the scrubby wasteland which had taken over in the once fertile lowlands of the Mae Soi Valley. The next priority was water. A dam was built on one of the few streams still flowing from the hills above, and water is gradually released into a series of smaller lakes in the valley below. As soon as there was water, the villagers began to plant thousands of trees. After just 5 years, the lowland forest is gradually returning. With more lakes planned, the traditional landscape of forest and small farm will soon emerge.
ที่เราจะอนุรักษ์ป่าไม้ต้นน้ำไว้ให้ได้เราก็ต้องให้ชาวบ้านมีที่ทำกินเลี้ยงครอบครัวได้ตลอดทั้งปีงั้นถ้าเราจะมีแต่การอนุรักษ์โดยไม่มีการพัฒนาที่ทำกินแล้วเนี่ยมันเป็นไปไม่ได้ฉะนั้นงานที่เราเห็นกันอยู่ตรงหน้าเนี่ยมันเป็นงานพัฒนาพื้นที่ป่าสงวนของรัฐบาลที่เสื่อมโทรมเพื่อมาแบ่งให้ชาวบ้านครอบครัวละ3 ไร่จำนวน274ครอบครัว
It's impossible to restore the lowland forests in the valley unless the watershed forests high up on these mountains are also protected. This is a key part of Ajahn Pongsak's strategy. Where the springs emerge, the forests are especially moist and rich. The trees here act like a sponge, absorbing the heavy monsoon rains, allowing the water to seep out slowly during the year, keeping the land cool and damp. But even these vital watershed forests are now in danger.
โครงการจากต่างประเทศทั้งจากองค์การสหประชาชาติสหรัฐและยุโรปได้ส่งทุนเข้ามาสนับสนุนประเทศไทยเพื่อให้รัฐบาลได้พัฒนาชาวเขาซึ่งอยู่บนต้นน้ำลำธารจากการปลูกฝิ่นเป็นอาชีพมาเป็นการปลูกพืชเศรษฐกิจแทนและได้ตัดถนนขึ้นไปส่วนเชื่อมโยงหมู่บ้านต่างๆฉะนั้นการตัดไม้ทำลายป่าก็ต้องแผ่ขยายไปอย่างกว้างขวางอันนี้เองจะเป็นเหตุที่ทำให้ป่าต้นน้ำลำธารของเมืองไทยถูกทำลาย
These prosperous cabbage farms, exporting to Japan and Singapore, are managed not by the lowland villagers, but by Hmong hill tribes, many of them refugees from neighboring countries. The aim, laudable in itself, is to persuade the Hmong people to stop growing opium by guaranteeing a steady income from cabbages. But watershed protection and intensive cabbage cultivation cannot coexist, even though in pure economic terms, the project has been a great success.
แต่การพัฒนาในแนวทางพุทธศาสนานั้นหมายถึงพัฒนาส่วนที่ชีวิตยังขาดที่ยังบกพร่องอยู่ให้มันมีขึ้นให้สมบูรณ์ขึ้นและจะต้องมีการอนุรักษ์สภาพแวดล้อมคือป่าไม้ให้มีความสมดุลอยู่ตามธรรมชาติอีกด้วยแต่ตามหลักพุทธศาสนาถ้าอนุรักษ์อย่างเดียวชีวิตจะหยุดนิ่งก็จะไปไม่ได้แต่ถ้าพัฒนาอย่างเดียวที่ผ่านมามันก็เป็นการทำลายสภาพแวดล้อมก็คือการทำลายชีวิตของตนเอง
If the Hmong could be persuaded to accept land down in the valley to grow their cabbages, the Dhammanaat Foundation plans to reforest the whole area with indigenous trees. So one of Nunie's principal activities is to scour the forest floor for the seeds of these trees.
Fruits like these are very important because they are foods for all sorts of deer, as well as hornbills, as well as monkeys and gibbons. And we want to make sure that we have all the foods in order to attract animals back into the area.
The key to all this is local participation and control. The scheme works because it works for local people. Healthy forests up in the watersheds means a healthy local economy for the villagers down in the valley.
คือการปลูกและการรักษาป่าต้นน้ำลำธารที่ถูกทำลายไปแล้วให้ฟื้นกลับคืนมาใหม่จะต้องอาศัยคุณธรรมเป็นพื้นฐานที่สำคัญคือคุณธรรมก็คือจะต้องให้ประชาชนในพื้นที่ที่ได้รับประโยชน์โดยตรงจากป่าในพื้นที่นั้นรู้จักคุณค่ารู้จักบุญคุณของป่าที่เลี้ยงชีวิตของตนเองตลอดมาแล้วให้เขาร่วมแรงร่วมใจจัดกลุ่มเป็นหมู่เป็นคณะขึ้นมาดูแลรักษาเราก็ยังขัดข้องอยู่ถ้าหากว่าเราปลูกฝังคุณธรรมให้ทุกคนทำหน้าที่รักษาป่าและมีระเบียบทั้งกฎหมายบ้านเมืองมาจัดให้การรักษาป่าเนี่ยถูกต้องตามระเบียบของป่าแล้วก็มีเงินสนับสนุนถ้าอย่างนี้แล้วเราสามารถที่จะทำให้ป่าที่เสื่อมโทรมมันถึงจุดอันตรายเนี่ยฟื้นหรือคืนกลับมาได้ภายใน10 หรือ 20 ปีเป็นอย่างช้า
The frontline troops in the battle to save the forests are almost always local people who have seen their land and their livelihoods directly threatened by so much so-called development. In northern India, a mass movement of women villagers, the Chipko movement, successfully confronted logging companies by literally hugging their trees. In Queensland, Australia, direct action by local people prevented the Daintree rainforest from being developed for totally inappropriate tourism and housing. In the Amazon, after years of campaigning in Brazil itself and by organizations like Survival International, large reservations have been designated for the Yanomami and Kayapo Indians. And in Sarawak, Malaysia, the Penang and other tribal peoples are fighting a last-ditch battle to save their forests from being shipped out to Japan to help build a few more skyscrapers. There are lessons to be learnt in Japan and the West from the struggles of people like these. But if the forests are to be saved, this depends as much on mobilizing opinion in the cities of industrialized countries as it does on local action in the forests. In these concrete jungles, it's all too easy to forget our continuing dependence on the natural world. We do not see the impact of what we call progress. We do not feel the vibrant connections between ourselves and the rest of life on Earth. In Thailand, a reverence for nature is still deeply instilled in their culture. It is the spiritual foundation of a healing process that offers great hope for the future. For even as we reap the benefits of industrial progress, it is important that our children should not lose that sense of reverence. At the festival of Loi Katoi, children throughout Thailand celebrate the gathering in of the harvest. Such thanksgivings take different forms in different countries, but they all embody the kind of respectful and loving relationship with the natural world that is as important for the future as it was in the past.